Bert, do you want to? Should we get started?
I think we should.
Okay, great.
Good evening. I noticed from looking at my participant screen that there are at least 20 attendees right now. And the participants, we're missing the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, which I'm sure will sign on shortly. This is Missoula's first virtual general neighborhood council meeting. And I hope it proves to be a success. So I will have a very limited role tonight. Colin Woodrow, the new neighborhoods coordinator who's replacing Jane Kelly, will moderate the meeting, and Kara is making it work. So thanks to Kara and Colin. And Colin, best wishes in your new job, and thanks for moderating tonight's meeting. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bert. Yeah, well, thank you for the introduction. I am Colin Woodrow with the Office of Neighborhoods. I want to thank everyone for participating and welcome everyone to the meeting. A thank you is owed to City Clerk Marty Raven and Kara Grewell, who is operating Zoom webinar for us, as well as our Neighborhoods Program Specialist Kelly Elam for preparing for this meeting. And also want to thank MCAT for broadcasting this meeting. On the agenda, we'll also, our presenters include Ken Alt with KJA Development, City Council Representatives Mirta Becerra and Jordan Hess, Wendell Beardsley, Karen Sippy, and Aaron Nuza with Friends of Grant Creek, Grant Parker with the Rocky Mountain Elks Foundation. And I do want to note that unfortunately, due to a scheduling conflict with the planning board meeting, Development Services is unable to present. So with apologies from Dave DeGrandpre, who had hoped to present, we will be sharing his presentation from the planning board meeting. I also want to stress that this is the first, as Bert has noted, this is the first general neighborhood meeting that we've had since March, and this is all due to our capacity with Zoom webinar. Part of that is, while we would of course prefer an in-person meeting, we're just constrained, and so we're gonna make Zoom webinar work to the best of our ability. So while we all need to be a little prepared for some inconvenience of this format, I think it needs to be noted that it's the shared intention of everyone that this be a forum, a public meeting forum that allows presenters to share their knowledge and their positions, and also to make sure that we create just another opportunity for community members to become better informed. I do want to note now that this meeting will not include a virtual vote, as this is both technically difficult to achieve, and it's also hard to ensure the validity of that vote. There are a few different polling tools that could be used on Zoom, but there's some issues with those. So we do want to ensure that everyone's voice is heard. And so for accuracy and also for posterity, to ensure that those voices, your voice and your positions, questions, or comments are logged, we are going to direct you to Engage Missoula, and we will talk, and I will show you both of those things. Let me share with you my screen. And so this is our agenda for tonight. And again, I'll be turning this over to City Council reps Mirta Becerra and Jordan Hess in just a moment, and we'll go through this. Kara will help us go through this process, and at the end, we will gather questions and comments, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I also did want to ensure on the agenda, everyone sees that there are some Zoom tips on here, and Kara is going to share some information and make sure that everyone who is participating has a full grasp of how to raise your hand, how to ask questions, how to submit public comment. I do want to take this time to show you on Engage Missoula. If you go to Engage Missoula to developer initiated projects, development applications, you'll find the Grant Creek Village 2920 Expo Parkway rezone here. This is a really wonderful tool, and I do want to just ensure that, just plug this for a quick moment, that this is a great way for you to not only learn more about the project, you can read staff reports that are on request and all of this, but you'd also be able to, right through here, submit, sign in, and add your comment. There's already 20 comments, some as recently as an hour ago or 35 minutes ago, so it's active, it's working. So I think that this is one of the a critical tool, and I just really want to make sure that that is being seen. Kara, I'm going to send this back to you, and perhaps you can share your screen with some quick Zoom instructions for participants, and then we'll swing it on over.
All right, so some of you probably saw this screen a little earlier, but just shows you how to register for any webinars in the future, and a link to the website that Colin just showed us. And then on this next page, just instructions for raising your hand on public comment. I've seen a couple of you have already tried the tool on Zoom. So if you're on a computer, just click on the participants and you can raise or lower your hand, and then either Colin or myself will mute and unmute you. Colin, right, you want it to be no more than 3 minutes when they're speaking?
Yeah, we will be doing that, holding to the 3-minute line. And our intention, again, is to try and go through presenters and allow for, we'll stick to the agenda. As we've discussed, all presenters are aware of that. And so, yeah, thank you.
Yep. And then there's instructions for a phone, and then like a mobile device, and then a other phone, and then the numbers for the city council voicemail and the city council email. So, and that's it on my end.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kara, for sharing that. And now I'll turn it over to Jordan Hess and Mirta Becerra. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Thank you, Colin. Mirta, do you want me to give a run through on the LUP process and then turn it over to you? Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Really grateful for the opportunity to be here. Grateful for Bert's unending enthusiasm and diligence regarding the neighborhood council. This is in Ward 2. This is, don't tell anyone else, but this is the strongest, most vibrant neighborhood council there is, and it's largely it's in no small part because of Bert's tireless efforts to organize it, and I appreciate that. Also grateful to Colin and Kara and Kelly for making this virtual meeting happen, and grateful to all of you for making this meeting format work in this strange world we're living in. So I'm not really going to say anything of substance, so I'm going to try not to say very much at all. Mainly, I want to say that I'm the chairperson of the Land Use and Planning Committee that will be hearing this item tomorrow. I'm one of your City Council ward representatives here in Ward 2, and I am primarily here tonight to listen. I have a duty. We've been petitioned by a private property owner who wishes to rezone their property to allow for more development potential. And that's a process that is contemplated in state law and in our zoning regulations. And there's a process that we follow in that. And one of the things that is incredibly important about that is that Mirta and I and the rest of the City Council remain and appear fair and unbiased throughout this process. So you're not going to hear me tonight saying that I support or oppose this project. You're not going to hear me expressing any opinions about any substantive issues. And the reason for that is that the developer has the right to make their case, and the supporters and opponents have the right to make their case. And the official vehicle that we have to do that is our public hearing process. And so our public hearing process is where all of this comment and all of this involvement coalesces into a council decision. And so I want to give a little background on process. In Montana state law, planning boards take on a variety of different functions, but in Missoula, the planning board is advisory to both the city and the county, so to the city council and the board of county commissioners. In this case, the planning board heard this item, I guess, last week, and though it feels somehow more recent and longer ago in the time warp that we're in right now, but then of course the neighborhood council meeting tonight. The land use and planning committee will have an informational pre-public hearing presentation tomorrow, and this is an opportunity for council members to ask questions and to to receive comment and ask questions. This is not a time, again, where you'll hear substantive comment from members of the city council. Our public hearing, and I think one of the things that's actually really positive about our virtual environment world is that our public hearings are now going a little longer, and there are multiple ways to get involved. So our public hearing will start on August 24th, and it will run for 3 weeks and until September 14th. And so that's really important. That means that you can make comment in a variety of ways. You can make comment at the live meeting on the 24th. You can also provide comment, written comment on Engage Missoula, or by email, as many of you have, or you can leave council a voicemail. If you prefer, if you don't have access to internet or prefer to leave an audio comment, you can do that by calling 406-552-6012. And that I think is actually one of the really positive things about our COVID environment right now, is that we are, we're able to kind of broaden the ways that people can get in touch. And so, while we're not able to all get together in a room and talk about this project, we are able to connect in more ways than we were before. So the last thing I want to talk about is questions. This is not, the meeting tonight is not really a time when, you can ask a question about traffic impacts or about, a particular substantive issue and get that answered tonight. But my commitment as one of your ward representatives and as the Land Use and Planning Committee chair is that if you have questions, I will make note of all of those, and as appropriate, I will attempt through the council questioning phase to get answers to all the relevant questions. So, if you have questions, I'm jotting them down and I'm adding those to questions that I have, and so we'll be sure to make note of all those and do the best we can to get those answered. So with that, again, thanks for having me, and thanks for showing up tonight on a beautiful but warm summer evening. And I'll turn it over to Mirta.
Thanks, Jordan. Good evening, everyone, and I just want to kind of go along the same lines of Jordan. When it comes to Bert Lindler, let me tell you that when I got appointed to city council, after 2 weeks of being appointed, I got a call from Bert Lindler, who said, I need you to come to Grand Creek and understand this neighborhood a little bit better. So he gave me a tour, showed me everything, and I liked it so much that I moved here. So I am your neighbor, and with that said, I want you to know that as a neighbor, I understand the concerns that you have regarding this proposed rezone. But as Jordan explained, we have a legal responsibility to remain neutral until we have to make a final decision and a vote on this proposal. But with that being said, I want you to feel comfortable coming to me either by phone or email. Let me know what your concerns are, and I'll make sure that they are forward to the rest of the council for their consideration during the deliberation period. Something different than the Grand Creek rezone, I wanted to update you all. I'm sure that for many of us who use Reserve Street, we have noticed a lot of construction. I asked that that I be given a little update on how that's going, and what I received from MDT is that, as we know, there's a southbound lane on Grand Creek Road that will be added to the north side of the intersection. And that all of that work should be done by October 20th. So I think that we should expect the bulk of all the work at that intersection to happen during the month of September. So just in case you wanted to know, that is what's happening. And I don't have any other news. I think, same as for many of you, we have been busy with city budget and with the rezone proposal. So that's been occupying a lot of my time as your ward representative. But I don't want to take any more time. I think many of you want to hear from other presenters. So please know that you can reach out. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mirta. Thank you, Jordan, for taking the time and sharing that information and all the myriad of ways and times that people can submit comments and questions on this project. I'm sorry to see that I know that we've been joined by other presenters, but we do not have Ken Alt on at this point. So in case I have sent up, we had heard that he would, the intention was KJNA would attend and provide a presentation. So sorry that we don't have anyone from KJNA to present at this time. My apologies. So I think we'll just have to look at the agenda, and we will have to push on.
And I think that maybe we have a presenter, or an attendee that needs to be elevated to a presenter. I think Mike Morgan is with that team, and Mike just had his hand raised. I'm not sure if
is that
if.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
I will add. We will. Mike Morgan, okay. And Michael Morgan, are you with KJA?
All right, we had some technical problems. Sorry about that.
No, perfect.
Michael Morgan here and Ken Alt.
Well, thank you for that. I will turn it over to you, and Kara can give you controls to take if you guys want to share your screen or share a presentation. Otherwise, we'll just give you guys time to present on your project.
Okay. For this meeting, everything's pretty much on the table. What we want to do, we're looking for the RM 145, which allows us to do 4-story units up to 45 feet. We heard numerous of time, or many times in the planning board meeting that traffic is a big issue. And tonight, I'd like to just take traffic and just set it aside. We're not saying that it's not an issue. Can we move it aside and ask another question is, what else out there that you guys don't want this project there for, or this zoning? What are your main concerns if it's not traffic?
So I don't know if they answered yet.
Is there someone that can answer that? Just so we can.
And Ken, is your intention to take Q&A? You would like us to? We've
Yeah, if you don't mind, it's like we're this isn't really a forum. This is just a neighborhood meeting, and
perfect.
we want to talk with you guys and just say what are your concerns other than traffic. We all know that traffic was a big concern with pretty much everybody that got on the last week at the planning board meeting.
Perfect. Well, thank you. I will turn it over. Lonnie Conley has a question.
Sure.
Yeah, so Grant Creek, I think, feeds into Hellgate Elementary School District, and what would the impact on that school be? And would they be able to keep up with the influx of students along with the Mullen Build projects that's going to go in?
Yes, good question. I spoke with some, what do they call them, school board member, and he spoke with the superintendent, and they're able to accept up to 400 students today, new students. We won't provide, they said their biggest jump in 1 year to date is between 40 and 50. So, you know, we don't plan on having, I don't think we have 40 or 50 students at the school that would be in our project based off the demographics that we have in our past projects. But they're welcoming it. The bus, you know, they said, oh my gosh, that'd be awesome. Can you guys provide us a bus stop? You know, they were very open to their idea was kids are our business. You know, we want kids. So they're open they have room, they have future room, and it's not a problem with the school.
Perfect. Lonnie, did that answer your question or any follow-up?
It did answer my question. I do have one other. Will any of these units be set aside for low income or Section 8 housing?
No. This is a market project.
All right. We also have Barry Hartman.
Yeah, hi. Been living in Grant Creek for 31 years. Your project is the size of the town of Ronan. From what I understand, there's 1,700 plus people in Grant Creek right now, and your project's going to bring somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 people in there. The traffic is a nightmare. I know you want to set aside traffic, but that's our biggest concern. The other thing is that all these people are going to have kids. There's nothing for them to do in your project, so they're all going to be in our creek, in our park, roaming our streets. I hate to sound like an old curmudgeon, but you know, I just know people, and when you have that many people coming into your neighborhood, there's going to be problems. And I hate to sound like Dick Venerable. He's infamous on making comments like that, but I sound like him. I'm sure that got some laughs. The whole thing that we're seeing is that if there's a fire, if there's an emergency, you can't get out of Grant Creek. I couldn't get out Friday. I was trying to just go to Target to buy a cooler, and I had to sit through 3 lights, and the traffic's backed up. And you put that big complex in there, there's no way for anybody to get in or out. And the people in Upper Grant Creek, we're going to be backed up all the way to our stone walls here. God forbid if there's ever a problem, a fire, emergency of anything, any kind. And it's just the idea there's too many people. So we're against, we don't live in, you know, four-story high rises. We live in single family units, and you're basically, no offense, but you're the 800-pound gorilla coming in to Grant Creek. And that's the reason the Rocky Mountain Elk said, well, they're going to move if you come in. And we're going to be, these are all people that are coming into these apartments that basically you're going to build these apartments. You said it's a market-driven program. Yeah, you're going to build them. Yeah, you're going to sell them. And so you're going to be owned, these are going to be owned by some insurance company or some bank or whatever. And we're going to be stuck with this for forever. And so we don't look upon this real favorably. I got to be real honest with you. And because this will destroy Grant Creek, quite frankly. We will not be the same Grant Creek we were. We will have traffic. We will have people. We will have dogs. We will have kids. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So I guess there isn't anything that I can say positive about it other than we should stick to the original zoning of single family housing. That's what we understood. And this whole thing of this 4-story high rise, I mean, you might as well go ahead and what are we going to be, Chicago? You're going to stick the city of Ronan in our neighborhood. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Again, I'll move traffic to the side for the meanwhile. I mean, I understand that traffic is a huge concern of all the neighbors. The kids that play and dogs that are going to be around, I've got a small presentation that I want to show you after this. I think I can answer those questions there. So if you could hold on, Barry, for a few minutes, and I'm going to describe what we're doing and why we're asking for this zoning. Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. I'm a huge supporter of Elk Foundation. I was a supporter for many years. I'm not today, but I love the Elk Foundation. The Elk Foundation is a great program. The Elk Foundation was given that property. They asked for a rezone. They got a rezone, just like what we're trying to do. So, if they need to move, that's unfortunate, but, they got a great gift there, and I think they got a great location. And I think we want to be a good neighbor to them. And I think when they see this project, they'll understand that we are a good neighbor. Ownership, I plan to own these. I have sold them. I see this property, this project as a AAA property. It's going to be, I can't show you one in Missoula that it'll be like. And that's what I got, another part of my presentation that I want to show, why we're asking for this 4-story, what it gives us, and all that. But I'll go into that in a few minutes. I don't plan on selling it. I'm not going to promise I won't, but this is, I've taken all my eggs and put it in one basket here, because I think we're going to show that this site is the perfect site for this project. And bear with me on that. I know everybody just looked up at me, but I do want to show it to you and why we're asking for these things. And I will do that in a few minutes. 4 stories, these 4-story high rises, there's 4-story all the way around us. The Elk Foundation is over 4 stories. They're 52 feet high. The 3 motels down below us are all over 45 feet. One's just at 45 feet. So we're not sky rising over anybody. We are surrounded by the same height. Even the 5 or 6 houses up on the rim on the north end, they'll be looking over the top of us. We're not going to be skyscraping over anybody. So that 4-story thing, if you look around what's there now, that's how tall these buildings are going to be. We can't go over 45 feet in that zoning. And the motels are there. The Elk Foundation is even higher. They're at 52 plus feet. So we'll fit right in. We're not skying over anybody. So next question.
Yeah. All right. The next caller is unidentified. If you could please identify yourself, that would be great.
Hello?
Yep, you are on. If you could identify your name, that'd be great.
This is Kim Burke, B-I-R-C-K, and I've lived in Grant Creek for over 30 years, since 1986. We cannot ignore the traffic. It's the major concern, and so I'll just say that a small fire becomes a big fire if fire trucks can't get to it. The existing zoning, which was created in 1995, I believe, was done by a process with lots of neighborhood participation in real person rather than on a telephone, which is what I'm doing now, sitting in the parking lot at Lowe's. But the input that the people in Prospect especially had gave them the reassurance that there would be single-family homes adjacent to their subdivision. That is encoded in the zoning. That was a trust that was created when that was put in place, and people bought properties with that understanding that there would be single-family homes adjacent to them. So to change that now, at least on that part, would be a violation of that trust, and it's not fair. Also, I've heard Mr. Alt compare his apartments to Cottonwood condos, which is entirely false. They are 2 stories, they're wooded, it's much less dense, and it's almost a park compared to what I understand he has proposed. So those are the main things I'm going to say with my 3 minutes.
Thank you, Kim.
I forgot your name, I apologize. Thank you for that. I did forget traffic again. We're setting it aside for now, but I understand that that's an issue. So fire, the fire station, the fire chief, they've all been contacted. their response is they don't see an issue with it. So I'm not a fireman. I know if there was a serious fire in that area, these are my thoughts. I'm not a fireman. They would shut those roads down. They would just open it up. There wouldn't be any stops. So they would get the people out, and they did not have a concern with that. Zoning, 80% of that land is zoned multifamily at 1,000 square feet per unit. Now, if there's some cross zoning in there, and I don't want to get into that today, because today we are just asking for the RM 145. We're not asking for anything else. But as it sits today, 80% of that land is zoned for 1,000 square feet per unit for multifamily, high density, for high density housing. Again, cross zoning. I know Bert's sitting there going, "That's cross zoning," and I know you can't do that. But right now, to not muddy the waters, we're going to council to ask for RM 145. Cottonwoods. I don't think I've said anything about Cottonwoods, but I would like to touch on Cottonwood. Yes, they were built as apartments. At the time, they were it. When they came in, there wasn't quite a complex like that in Missoula, and they found a home right there at the bottom of Grant Creek, and it's a beautiful community. It's since been condoed. It's part ownership. It's part rental right now. And yes, the height of those buildings are 24 feet. I measured those as well. And then I also want to show in my presentation, I like what the young lady just said, that, it's like a park in there compared to what we have. I want to show what we're going to have, and then say, I like the fact that those are a park. They've got a lot of trees and stuff, but I think she'll see that ours is also a park. Next questions.
Thank you, Ken. And I've got 3 people with their hands up. I'm just taking them in order. Next is Sarah Carlson.
Hi, I live in Prospect, and I've lived here for over 20 years. And as I'm sitting outside, I can see the hotels from my back porch. And I am not the 5th or 6th house on the rim. I'm the 7th house on the rim. And the height will absolutely affect me and affect my view and affect the neighborhood. I do have a concern about the height. And you just can't set the traffic aside. It is so short-sighted to ignore the infrastructure that is not sufficient to handle what your development will bring to this neighborhood. It just can't be put to the side. We just cannot ruin an entire neighborhood by being ignorant of what this will create. And at the moment, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
You bet. I would just point out, I think your point, along with the traffic and the infrastructure, and we can touch on infrastructure. I think we're going to be tomorrow morning really discussing infrastructure, is height. There was roughly 25 feet mined out of that spot. So it's sunk in the ground, and we're at 45, we're asking for 45 feet. So you'll be like you are if you're sitting up on that house, on that rim. We've got some photos. You are looking out over the top of those. There's a hole in the middle where the site or the gravel pit was, where these buildings will sit down in, and you are looking right over the top. We Bert probably remembers our very first neighborhood meeting down at the restaurant down there on Reserve. We showed them where that line was with our demonstration. When we had the site, we had our surveyor go up and survey the height and where 45 will hit, and you in fact are looking over the tops of the roofs. When we talk about infrastructure, I'll just touch on that right now. Everybody's got their own idea about infrastructure, and every time I look into this infrastructure, I find out that this site is even more perfect for this project than I thought. Most of you guys were at the planning board the other night, and after the public comment, the planning board commented much, and a lot of it was about the infrastructure, and they went to trail systems a lot. You know, if we're talking about sewer, water, we got all that, but we're talking about they were talking about sidewalks. How do we attach it to the city? Do the city sidewalk come up here and attach to us? Their response was no, but in their trail guide for the city, there is a trail system that comes down Grant Creek, underneath the underpass, and all the way down Reserve, and it does tie in. And so we do have that. That's not the best, and I'm all for making that better. Trail systems with apartments and neighborhoods. You know, there was a day that I didn't like to give the city a piece of my subdivision or my project for a trail system, but I'm sold on the trail system. We built Ashland Place apartments on a trail system. We lived on a trail system. We've heard a lot of comment about, well, we're just going to flood the trail system. Well, the Kim Williams Trail is right down through town. It's got the bulk of the city on that trail, and it's awesome. And you guys have a beautiful trail up Grant Creek, and it's awesome. But there's nothing more fun and enjoyable than taking a walk down the trail and running into people you know and sharing the trail. The Kim Williams Trail, I spent every day on that for 3 or 4 years, and never was there a time where I thought, God, there's just too many people on this trail. It was more fun to run into some neighbors and you know, say hey, or you know, someone's riding their bike or walking their dog, or they want to come up and pet your dog, and you get to know people. The trail is a beautiful thing. So that infrastructure is there. There's also a site on the other side of Grant Creek, up behind the town pump, that was just donated to the Clark Fork Land Trust. That is going to be a trail system tied into even Rattlesnake. So I mean, there's infrastructure here before you even get on my site that we're going to provide. We talked at Bert, you remember the very first meeting, the transit bus. Can we work on getting that bus system to come up Grant Creek? And we're all for it. I don't know if I can provide the land for it, but we would love to be a part of providing or the building or the stop or helping with that. You know, our property's off Grant Creek by 500 feet, so that may or may not be the perfect spot to put the bus station or a stop. We're all for bringing that up there, and we would like to help in any way to do that. Like I said, I would give them the corner of my property to put that on it. I don't know if the corner of my property is the best location for it, but we would be willing to be part of the structure or anything else, the groundwork to build the actual thing, or pay for portions of it or all of it. We are for that. So saying that infrastructure is not there, boy, there's a heck of a lot of infrastructure that is there. And in my presentation, I want to show the stuff that we will be providing on our site. You know, so if we do have all those kids and all those dogs that they're talking about, we have places for them on our site. We don't want them to leave. We don't want them running around up in your neighborhood. And by what we're going to be offering, I doubt they'll be going up there. I'm sure they'll be staying here. It's probably going to be the other way around. Is we'll be welcoming neighbors from above down to play on our open areas and some of our amenities. So with that, next question.
Yeah, and Ken and Michael, we've got 4 hands raised, and I think we can take another question or two. But you also have a presentation you'd like to provide?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a timeline for that, or how much time that presentation may be?
You know, I had a big thing laid out, and I don't think those are the important topics. The important topics are the things I want to show you with a couple site plans versus other projects in Missoula. So I just want people to look and they don't have to agree with me on it. I just want them to take a look at it, and we can just touch on some stuff. Okay. So it's probably going to be 5-10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. In the interest of time, we'll take one. Ed Koachek has been waiting for a while in here, and then we'll have more time for public comment if you've raised your hands. There's 2 other folks who have raised their hand fairly recently. So Ed, with your question.
Hello? Ed okay, now you got me. I unmuted. Sorry about that. So Ed Kowchick, I live at 8525 St. Vrain Way, approximately 3 miles up Grant Creek in Colorado Gulch. I'm not going to bore you with history, but quick. I moved to Missoula in 1971 when we had a population of 29,000 people. I've watched Missoula grow to around 75,000 people. I welcome more people to live in Montana and Missoula. It's a great place. That's why I raised my family here. I have lived up Grant Creek on Colorado Gulch for 30 years. I've lived in Missoula long enough to, as many of others of you have watched Reserve Street go and from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. I know you don't want this to be about traffic, but I agree that it's unfair not to bring traffic into this. It's not just the traffic. It's the number of the population or the number of people that's going to triple the population of Grant Creek. You can't ignore that either. You can't sidestep that. When the original zoning was put in place, I guess someone said it was 1995, we had a lot less traffic in Missoula at the time. We had less pressure on North Reserve. And even back then, it was only zoned, I think it was for approximately 500, 501 or 2 doors. Now it wants to be zoned for 1,185 doors. It just isn't right, You can't ignore these other facts, whether it be, the fire department, they don't live up here. I've been up in Grant Creek during 3 significant fire events that threatened people's lives and homes. We had a hard time getting people even up to our house sometimes to evacuate because of traffic. You just can't ignore that. I mean, yeah, and quite honestly, and we are for the original zoning. We are for participating in Missoula's growth. We think that the original zoning was a good zoning, a fair zoning. We can handle that number, that number of doors, those number of people, but to more than double it is going to be a major, major strain. Every day, it's going to make a big difference. And I'll tell you what, going with the original zoning, again, we can live with. But if your project is approved by the city council, it's there for life. You're going to build those buildings. They're never going to go away. No one's ever going to be able to get enough infrastructure in there to handle it. And we're going to live with that for as long as we own property up Grant Creek. And personally, I just think it's a disaster. We are all for the original zoning. We want to see 500, maybe 501 doors, whatever the original number was. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed. Again, you threw up the infrastructure, and if you guys could be more clear on when you say infrastructure, just so we can address what that might be. Like I said, we have sewer, water, we have drainage, we have the trail systems, we have stuff. If there's anything else that I'm missing, can you please identify it so we can discuss what that might be? Population, it's coming. I know you guys, nobody wants to hear that, and especially when it's in your backyard. One of the things I noticed when I Google down and look at Grant Creek, and then I come down on maybe Rattlesnake, is Grant Creek is actually so underdeveloped. And, if we don't if we come down to a site like this it's in a great progression of exactly what planners do, is we have our commercial, and the next comes high density housing, and then the next gets down into some single family housing. If they come in and take that away in those areas that we can actually put that, then the next problem Grant Creek may have is there's going to be another one up above you, and you're all going to say, well, there's no zoning up there, and we're going to fight that. We're going to do this. But the way to stop that or slow it down is to not knock. And I'm going to show you in our presentation. It might ease some. I'm not going to try to win everybody over on it. But if we take 500 units out of here that you guys are claiming, I think it's a lot less. And I just don't want to bring that up right now or muddy those waters. Because you're, Ed, Bert, you know, he cleared some stuff up for me. And as it sits today, Bert is right, but there's many things you can do with this property that changes that. And that does change density. So I don't want to argue with Bert and say, hey, you're wrong. And Bert, you know, he probably still thinks I'm wrong, but like I said, 80% of that is 1,000 square feet per unit. And so I'll just move on at that. But by taking, Missoula's asking for 9,000 units in the next 15 years. If we take 500 out of a spot where I'm going to be able to show you that it does fit, it fits better than any subdivision or any apartment complex that you could show me in Missoula. Those spots, they're gonna be looking for other spots. And when you look at Grant Creek, you guys are right. Grant Creek's beautiful, and that's where they're gonna go. And you know, zoning's change. Where all you guys live at Prospect, that was changed so you guys could live there. And you may not think that can happen above you, but it can happen. It happens all over Missoula. And so by coming in here and just something to think about when I show you this and just go through some stuff is maybe this is the right spot to put those units. You know, maybe let's put a dent in that 9,000 units that are coming, or that are needed. And with that said, next question or move on to the presentation.
Yeah, Michael, if we can move on to your presentation.
Okay.
We answered, there are 4 people who have had their hands raised for a shorter period than the original, the other commenters. So we can turn it over for your presentation. Kara, if you want to provide the controls for Ken so they can share their presentation, that'd be great.
I want to make this really easy. I'm just going to put 2 pieces of, or 2 site plans up. And I just wanted to show, and just please look at what I'm saying. I don't want to try to change your mind, but I want to show you what we're offering and what this zoning will give us. On top of your guys' head right now is, hey, it's getting you 1,100 units. We're not getting 1,100 units in there. It's just impossible to get it in there. If we get that zoning, will that zoning happen? Yeah. I'm going to show you a site. Yeah, the zoning said we could do 217. We had 171, and I'll show you why. It just doesn't fit all the time because the math says that. It just doesn't fit. So with that said, I'll throw up a couple of sites up here, and I just want to show you why we're trying for 4-story. I'd like to get these 2.
Okay, you got it. Bear with me a second, folks. Okay, this one. And then correct. Okay, now I can share screen now, right, folks?
No, not that.
You have not yet shared your screen, but you should have that capacity.
We want that.
The share screen button is the bottom. There we go.
You see that? Okay.
We want that.
And then one more. Let me step here. Let's see, how did I do that? Share screen again. Can I only show one image at a time? Perhaps.
Yeah, they'll just show your screen. So if you can pull it up in a different way, you're welcome to. Otherwise, it will just show whatever your computer's pulling.
Okay.
So you want me to start with one and kind of point that out? A couple things, or I guess I can do with that mouse. Huh?
Now do you, okay, just one second. Do you see 2 different images coming up here now, folks? I'm sorry, but are you seeing two different images at the same time?
No, there's a Photo 6 Mullen 3-story aerial example JPEG that's pulled up right now.
Which one?
Yeah, let's just start with that one.
Okay.
It looks like we're only doing one at a time, so can we do that Mullen one again?
This one?
No.
and I will take this opportunity just to remind you that we are trying to keep on our agenda. And so as you're able, if I know you requested 5-10 minutes for this, and then we'll push on to our next presenter. Okay, thank you.
Okay, did you see another image come up just now? An aerial of apartment buildings. What are you seeing right now?
Sorry, you're still on the photo 6 Mullen 3-story aerial.
Okay.
JPEG.
That's it,
Okay,
right there.
this one is
No.
what they're seeing.
They're seeing the Mullen
Okay.
story right there.
go
Okay.
ahead.
One thing, all the cards are kind of on the table right now, so I don't want to sound like, hey, this to be threatening, but I also don't want to get denied and pushed into a corner where something happens that we know you don't want. Because I think if I can show you, we're going to try to find that next one. It's that one you guys are posting all over, with the green and all that stuff. The original one, Bert, remember that we brought to the original meeting. I wanted to put these side by side. One of the things, so this is apartment project down on Mullen Road that was built in the last 3 or 4 years. You guys are probably all aware of it. There's this one right here is the Brooklyn West Apartments. This is the Tollefson Apartments. These are 3-story, and what the multifamily, what do you call that? Multifamily? No, that makes us put this 40-40 in there.
Oh, the activity area?
Yeah, they make you put a 40 by 40 activity area. That's an open, that's grass, that's open. And in this 171 units, here's our activity area right here. And this is a little bigger. This is probably 40 by 50. And then we have some grass in here that's probably, there's a sidewalk coming down and, maybe 20 feet. But we have 5 foot through here. We have, 5 foot from the sidewalk up to the buildings. Here's an activity area for the Tollefson Apartments. You could just see where these areas are, that when we have to get that density in 3-story buildings, we have to create more buildings, and we lose our ability to have open space. And so I'm like one of the only apartment developers or owners in town that's actually lived in these. And since 2012, I probably spent 7 of those years living in my complexes. And I heard a lot of stuff from the planning board is, boy, this project needs a lot more planning, And I want to assure you that this project has been being planned for probably 25 years. And the site presented itself, because this is what we're used to having to do. We come in, we buy a 5-acre piece, and this 5-acre piece allowed for 217 units. And we came in here and put 171. It was pretty much impossible to go to the 217 unless I did all 4-story. But I would have lost. I would have been able to do 2 parking spots per unit. Most of the conversations when an apartment complex is coming in, the only thing we ever hear is parking. Where are you going to park? Park. We haven't heard parking in the Grand Creek Village. That's because it's been well planned out, and we have this space for parking. We have that's a huge amenity across the country for apartments is parking, and by going to the 4-story, and we show you the next slide, we gain all that. We have these 40-foot sections like this around all the buildings. We have a park that is as big as this whole area right here on this project. We have the hillsides. We have 22 acres of hillside, plus we have some foothills that, I see kids sledding down those hills. I see kids, places to walk their dogs. Now, 10 years ago, you couldn't find an apartment in town that allowed pets. Well, if you want to be in the game, you have to allow pets nowadays. So in this 5 acres, the 171 units, we had over 100 dogs in there. Now, where do we go to let them go potty? Well, we take them out to these 5-foot strips, or we take them to the only play area for the kids. And we had a really strict policy. We did DNA tests and swab dogs, and if we found species, we'd pick it up, send it off to the lab, and find them. But in the wintertime, when they come out and they urinate, we're stripping up sod in the spring to replace it, because it doesn't work. I mean, it's awesome to allow for puppies and dogs, and it doesn't work. But it works in Grant Creek because we have so much space. We have 22 acres of hillside that we could carve a trail into and landscape it and have an open dog run and have an area where, you know, I'm starting to touch on some stuff that we'll be talking about tomorrow that came up in planning board. Is we restrict trips to Blue Mountain. When these people come home, I mean, I lived right there. I watched every step of that for 2 years. They come home, 15 seconds later, they're out the door with their dog in their car, taking off to Blue Mountain, Rattlesnake, any trailhead they can find to take their dog for a walk. Because where do you go here? You don't have it. There's no space. And so the biggest thing I want you to look at here, and I drag to that next slide, is how big this 40 by 40 area is. Okay, now we're gonna try to find our other slide here.
Bert, do you have the ability to pull up that site plan? Do you have it, or do you want me to try to do it? I can try to do it. I just don't know if I can.
Let's see if we can find it. It's kind of critical to our.
Okay, so I'm just gonna close this a minute. So now if I go back and I share screen. Okay, I'm gonna share screen again. Okay.
And Michael, while you search for that, Ken, we'll take another caller, and you welcome that. You got this? Okay.
Did the images pull up?
Yep.
But that's not the one I want, Ken.
No. I wonder, could you go email it? How did you get those on there? Because I can take some questions while we.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and let people talk for a minute, please, and I'll see if I can get this image pulled up, okay? If you have another question, bring up.
Peggy Walker is joining us with a question.
Hi, my name is Peggy Walker. I live on Prospect Drive, and I'm a member of the board of the Prospect Meadows Homeowners Association. I've talked to lots of people in our homeowners association, and to a person, they do not like this project. And I just want to go back to something that we started with and that you addressed, which is these questions of so-called infrastructure and traffic, which you want to put aside. And I just want to emphasize that traffic and infrastructure, availability of services are inextricable from this project. We can't just say, well, you know, let's look at the project and all the good things about it, and we'll get to traffic and we'll get to services later. The bottom line is that if this project goes through, a person living in this area, aside from the trails that you mentioned, which, by the way, would be north of the freeway, a person is vehicle bound and will have to drive to school, bus to school if there are bus services, drive to a store, drive to work, etc. And quite frankly, you know, no one that I've talked to in this area is against adding apartment buildings or condos or other forms of multifamily development. We supported and continue to support the original zoning and the kind of development that it would allow. And what I'm hearing is, at least it seems to me like you are minimizing and brushing off the dangers of starting this project, building it without adequate roads and services in place. I guess the only other thing that I want to emphasize is that this is going to be a vehicle-dependent development, and the notion that, all these people are going to be happy to stay within their little development and walk their dogs on the promised but not existing new trails, as opposed to walking them up into Prospect Meadows, as people do now. We have a terrible problem with people walking dogs and not picking up after them. We have problems with people on our on the trail along Grant Creek. I just have to say that I really appreciate the really thorough and thoughtful process that the Planning Commission went through, and when they voted 7-2 against this project. And I hope that the city, in its next stage of review and approval, will deny it, because it's just way too large for the space and for the services and the roads and the other amenities that are in place there. And
Peggy, we've hit 3 minutes.
okay, I'm done. I've said my piece. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll touch a couple of things on the traffic. Yes, I'm not trying to say that traffic's not an issue. I just wanted to talk about other things. We hammered at traffic last week, so we understand that. Services. What is causing the traffic at the light is not the neighbors. And we got a traffic guy that's going to say that. It's what's really going to affect that intersection is more commercial activity. When you see that noon, it's people diving off the interstate or coming down Reserve to hit Town Pump to grab a pizza or grab a coffee in the morning. That's where a majority of that traffic is coming from. So when we talk about services, how much more of that do we want to bring up Grant Creek? We're kind of against the infrastructure part of that, but we're kind of for having it. To bring more commercial stuff up Grant Creek is going to cause way more trips than housing. With that said, there is commercial space available for services. There's lots available down on Expo Way. They're available to anybody that wants to jump in the ring and start up a restaurant or any type of business down there. It's there. The land use that they're talking about, where we need to have commercial high density housing and all that, it's there. It's available. It's available now. So and then the trail with the dogs, the people from our community going up Grand Creek into Prospect, I would assume there's going to be a lot of people taking the trail. The trail's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's going to be like the Kim Williams Trail, where people are going to want to do that. Going up into Prospect, I don't see that, because I think we can offer them that here. I believe it's probably, if anything, it'll be the other way around. So with that, that's the answer to that question. Now I'm going to start touching on this site plan.
And Ken, real quick, just in the interest of time, we've got a couple more minutes, and then we do need to move on. Okay.
So can you guys see the site, the original site plan that we had? It's been all over, so everybody can see it. One thing I want you to take a look at is one of those parking spots. This thing's to scale. So one of those little tiny parking spots, you see the black lines in the parking area. That's 18 feet. Now, when we were talking about that 40 by 40 space that we have required to do in multifamily, take that 18 feet and put it on the other side of the sidewalk in that green area. You know, it's over one, probably two, all the way around those buildings. So we're creating, with going 4 stories, that park space, that little tiny park space that we had in that other project, and that you'll find in all the projects, new projects in Missoula. We've created that around basically every building, and put a park in the center that's as big as 3/4 of my whole project on Mullen Road of open space. Now, I'm going to talk a lot about amenities, but there's no greater amenity than space. When I watched that 40 by 40 there, and we had a neighbor that had two little kids, and I saw them running around there, and I'm like, gosh, this is the best I can do for somebody with kids. And when this property came up, I came to Mike and I go, gosh, let's make this all 4 stories and make all that space. Let's get space out so we can use it, because there's no place to go. Nobody walks out their unit. Nobody wants to make eye contact. What I want to go over some demographics of what we had down there, and I think it's going to be we're trying for a different demographic here, but we had 74% are professionals. We had 9% retired. We had 16% students. Now that's probably a lot different than probably you thought. But one of the things that we're going to, another issue, not just apartments or units that are needed in Missoula that we're going to solve or help solve, is the fact that in the past 10 years, there's been numerous TV reports and newspaper articles on 3-bedroom units. There's no 3-bedroom units. We have over 100 3-bedroom units in here. And with that invites families. We're trying to create a community here that is, it's not, in those developments down on Mullen Road are beautiful developments. They're needed. I don't want to say a negative thing about them, but we're not trying to develop that here. This site, look what this site allows. And, I know that number is big, but this is a big piece of property. This is 46 acres. And so, yeah, it does seem big, but what we're providing here, and this right here, that's a full indoor gymnasium. That's going to cost me $1.5 million to build that. Now, if I'm trying to squeeze units in here, I pull that thing out, I put 54 units right there. But we've created a spot here for people to go, even in the winter or when it's 100 degrees out, they're going to go inside. This also eliminates trips, because everybody advertises their little gym in their clubhouse, but it's so small and it doesn't have the social aspect. It doesn't have the classes that people want. This is what we're going to be able to provide here for our community. This eliminates trips. This is one trip to the gym. These people go to the gym. There's no place else for them on this other project on Mullen Road. There's no place to get out and actually move. So this thing right here, this just kind of shows you that we're not trying to jam these in. We're taking advantage of this beautiful location. The site itself right now is a gravel pit. It's not beautiful, but it's going to be. We're going to put 400 to 500 trees and bushes in there, and take all the gravel, and it's going to be grass. And so I just want you to see the space in here. We got this little hill, so there's another little, this is that mound area that goes around the site. And this is where that R, is it 5.4? 5.4 starts right here.
The steep part of the site.
The steep part of that site. This is that rim up there, I believe where Bert's sitting right now. This is where that sits. So just down in the hole, look at the green area we have. You can't show me a spot in Missoula that has that. You can't show me a spot in the state that has that. This,
Well,
this the
Ken and Michael, thank you for your presentation. You give you just a last minute to conclude, and then we have gone well over our agenda.
okay.
Thank you for answering
One
questions.
thing I just want you to do is just take a look at that and just visualize what that is based on that 40 by 40 section. If I don't want to get shot down and us forced to go back to that to get our density. And that's what, I don't think the neighbors in Grand Creek want that either. That's why I think this, doing the 45 feet and allowing us to open it up, I think that's why we want to do it.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Michael. Kara, if you can, Michael, you have to stop share on your Zoom. If you can stop share, Kara will be sharing Dave DeGrandpre, planner with Development Services, presentation to the planning board in regards to what zoning exists, what zoning is allowed, and what that process looks like. Thanks, Carol.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Dave DeGrandpre with Development Services. And we are here to review an application to rezone or potentially rezone 2920 Expo Parkway. The owner of the property is KJA Development LLC. Applicant Mike Morgan of Hoffman Morgan Associates. And the rezoning application is to change the zoning from R 5.4 residential, RM 1-35 multi-dwelling, B 2-2 community business, C 1-4 neighborhood commercial to RM 1-45 multi-dwelling. Let's see. The property itself is just north of the I-90 interchange west of Grand Creek Road. There are two parcels, a north parcel and a south parcel. Total acreage is 44 acres. The property itself is a former gravel pit. On the west side of the property, you can see, looking at what's on your screen, there's an irrigation ditch located running roughly northwest, southeast toward the western side of the northern property, and below it, that ditch to the west, to the left, is a steep slope. To the east, it's a gravel mine area reclaimed. It's a partially flat area. The property itself is accessed from Expo Parkway, which is a public city street to the south, and also Stonebridge Road, a public city street that intersects the property or abuts the property, I guess, about midway through. In terms of surrounding land uses, there's a combination to the south, as I'm sure you're all aware, south of the
Dave, we lost you there. Can you still hear us?
Okay, I'll start that again. Sorry about that. Connectivity issues, I guess. So I'm talking now about adjacent land uses to provide a little context for the character of the area. To the south is oriented commercial type development. There's a restaurant, of course, three hotels that accommodate tourists and others, and also.
Dave, we're not seeing the presentation. The power. Can you reshare?
Yep. How's that?
Great.
All right, super. Hopefully that won't happen again. Adjacent land uses. Auto-oriented commercial to the south, a couple of vacant lots that are zoned for commercial development of varying scales. To the southeast are multi-dwelling units, condominiums in other words. Also to the east is the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation headquarters, a warehouse, and other facilities, cultural type facility. To the north is a single family or single dwelling residential type development. Again, to the west, steep hillside.
Dave, I think we lost your audio this time. We're still seeing your PowerPoint presentation on the screen.
Lost my audio. Can you hear me now, Vince?
Oh, you are. Sorry. That was a long pause. I apologize.
All right. Well, it's a long pause because it's taking a while for the slide to switch for some reason. There we go. Okay. So the current zoning, it's an interesting mix. We have 4 different zoning districts that are located on these 2 properties. The northern property is zoned R5.4. That's a single family type residential district, single family duplex. The majority of that property is zoned residential multi 1-35, and there's also a bit of C1-4, which is a multiple use type commercial district. Also on the property is a B2-2, a neighborhood type commercial district. The zoning, because the properties have multiple zonings on them, the way that Title 20 is written, it's Title 20, Section 20.01.100E. These are called split zoned parcels. And what it really boils down to is the more restrictive zoning on a parcel that more than one zoning on it applies. And so in this case, the north parcel is zoned R5.4. The south parcel is zoned RM1-35. So you can see on your screen, here are some of the parameters for the different zoning districts. Like I mentioned, R5.4 is typically, or it's a single family or single dwelling and duplex type district. The minimum parcel area is 5,400 square feet. In this zoning, in our zoning, Title 20, there's a baseline that's given, but there's a density reduction in terms of baseline number of units that are provided, but also a density reduction based on the steepness of slopes on a particular parcel. So the baseline zoning on the north parcel would allow 283 single dwelling units, but because of the hillside reduction, the density reduction, the baseline zoning provides for 155 dwelling units today on the northern parcel. On the southern parcel, with zoning of RM1-35, that zoning it accommodates a wide range of residential uses, all building types, including single dwelling residential, duplex, condominiums, mixed use development, and also larger scale multi-dwelling complexes. The maximum height in the RM1-35 is 35 feet. Again, there's a base number of dwelling units that are allowed, and then but with the density reduction, it's dropped down to 339. So according to my math, which might not be perfect, but it'll give you a ballpark, it's about 495 or 494 to be exact uses that are allowed today under the current zone. The applicant is seeking to modify the zoning on both parcels to RM1-45. So this district it accommodates a wide range of residential uses, all of the building types, including single dwelling, duplex, multi-dwelling, and mixed use. It has all of the same parameters as RM1-35, with the exception of the maximum height. So remember, in RM1-35, the maximum height is 35 feet. Here in RM1-45, the maximum height is 45 feet. Again, there's a base number of dwelling units that could be allowed, and after the hillside reduction, the maximum number is 1,185. But I want to point something out to you, and that is that number doesn't take into account a lot of factors. So under our zoning, there needs to be area, of course, for parking, circulation. 20% of a multi-dwelling unit site needs to be set aside for activity area. There's landscaping and setbacks and things like that. So that number is certainly higher than could actually be developed on the property. That's just, those are raw numbers, not taking into account some of the other requirements of the zone. And then the growth policy. So there, as you know, our Missoula growth policy has what's called a future land use map. And the future land use map is according to the growth policy, is a guide for appropriate development and redevelopment of different areas. The growth policy future land use map provides general categories for types of development. We're not at the specific granular level yet. This is more planning level, more 30,000 feet type view. But the growth policy has two specific land use designations for the property: residential high, so residential high density greater than 24 units per acre, and also regional commercial and services. So residential high greater than 24 units per acre is just like it sounds. It is encouraging high density residential development. That growth policy designation covers 87% of the site, or of the two properties combined. The second growth policy designation, regional commercial and services, covers about 13%, or just about 5.5 acres of the site. Regional commercial and services is a designation that encourages or provides area for larger scale commercial and service type development. It could be hospitals, it could be car dealers, it could be all kinds of different businesses that need a lot of land area, might need a lot of parking. Think of the hotels, the tourist-oriented hotels that are there, for example. So you have two growth policy designations on the property. And then each of these designations and all the designations on the future land use map and the growth policy, now getting more to a more granular level, there are different zoning districts that are appropriate or that help implement those land use designations. And so in the case of the residential high density, there are 4 different implementing districts: the RM1-35, which a good portion of the property is currently zoned, RM1-45, multi-dwelling, RM1.5, and RM0.5. These are all multiple family type residential districts. And the regional commercial and services area, that has 4 different implementing districts as well. There's neighborhood commercial, community commercial, industrial residential, and also public lands and institution. One thing I would like to point out about the 3 different commercial districts that are implementing districts for the regional and commercial services area is they also provide for residential development. And the residential development that they provide for is up to 43 dwelling units per acre, which, by the way, is the same development density, residential development density that is allowed under the RM1-45 and also RM1-35. So those commercial districts also allow for residential development at the same density as these residential districts, is my point. One of the primary criteria for a zoning amendment is compliance with the growth policy. Got a couple of quick slides on that. And so, in looking at the growth policy, there are a lot of moving parts to it. There are a lot of pieces. There are a lot of policies. There are a lot of goals. There are a lot of objectives. There's also the future land use map. So I'm going to hit this in 2 different ways. The first is with the future land use map. So it's my belief and my recommendation to you that RM1-45, the zoning that's requested, substantially complies with the growth policy future land use map because 87% of the property is designated as residential high density greater than 24 units per acre. Because RM1-45 is an implementing district of the residential high density designation, and because the allowed residential density is the same that's allowed under the regional commercial and services future land use map designation in those commercial areas that I just described. The growth policy has lots of, like I said, lots of policies, lots of goals, lots of objectives. And any good attorney could tell you that any particular project either complies or doesn't comply, based on an evaluation of the growth policy. It's essentially, there's a bit of a subjectivity to it. But in my view, after reviewing the growth policy, after reviewing the application, I believe that this project does substantially comply or this rezoning, I should say, does substantially comply with the growth policy because it does focus inward to some degree. It can be served by, well, it's not infill development in the city core. It can be served by city sewer, city water, police, fire, street maintenance, and other services. It certainly supports the city's housing goals. However, there are some services that aren't currently available today in a sufficient, if all of the units, if the residential development plan the developer has envisioned were to come to fruition tomorrow, there are certain things like transit is not currently available. Some of the sidewalks aren't currently up to snuff. There are some transportation related issues, there are bike ped type issues, and parks in the area are substandard to serve this development. Maybe a quick editorial, and that is, it's kind of difficult. It's a real balancing act. Do you need to have all of the, do you start with the planning like we did here with the growth policy and designate the area as residential high density, and then build out the transportation systems and urban services and things like that over time, or do you have to have all those services in place before you do the planning? Well, in this case, we did it the other way. We did the planning first, providing the opportunity for high density residential development, and then there are plans in place to improve the facilities and services over time to meet the needs of potential future residents if the zoning were to go through and if the development were to occur. And then lastly, one of the biggest comments that we've heard, that you've read in all of the hundreds of comment letters that you've seen is regarding transportation. Aaron Wilson is available tonight to talk about transportation issues. He's a planner with a metropolitan planning organization. And one thing I'd just like to point out to you is the developer of a building permit process can be required to provide a traffic impact study, and then also, which is reviewed by the city engineering department, and then also can be required to provide transportation improvements. They might be pedestrian bike improvements, they might be street improvements, they could be lots of different things, a bus stop, for example. Petitioning into the urban transportation district, for example. So that's also, those items are also kind of in the works. The developer has submitted a building permit application for one multi-unit structure. I'm not sure if that's been approved yet, but I know it's being reviewed. And then in summary, I suppose, based on all of these different factors, in my view, the project doesn't meet all of the goals, objectives, policies, the growth policy, but it meets more than it doesn't. And it also helps to implement several of the other goals. So I believe that it substantially complies with the growth policy. And then moving on to the other review criteria. Looks like we've got maybe a little issue with the video, but let me just continue. So one of the criteria has to do with public services and transportation. So whether the zoning is designed to facilitate adequate provision of transportation, water, sewer, schools, parks, and other requirements, and also the effect on motorists and non-motorists. Your staff report addressed those items, and I don't probably need to go through them all. Suffice to say, public services like sewer, like water, police, fire, street, parks, they all can be provided. And I just want to give you a little bit of background as well. So, when our office was reviewing this application, we really tried to understand. We're hearing a lot of comments from members of the public saying, issues are going to be too significant. There are major public health and safety, things like that. So we went out and really tried to prod State Department of Transportation, the PR department, city police department, public works, and others to determine if there were public health and safety issues or this zone change. If there were, other issues that might gate this or lead to a recommendation of denial on this project. And we just, none of the agencies that commented, none of the subject matter experts let us know that there were major public health and safety issues or transportation issues. They don't seem to feel like, in general, that these issues can be addressed over time, or the appropriate services and public health and safety measures are in place today. In terms of compatible urban growth, it's my view that zoning would provide for compatible urban growth. You've got highway-oriented commercial to the south, hotels and restaurants and other commercially zoned property. you have single-family residential to the north. So to me, this provides a transition. It's a multi-residential zoning district providing a transition between residential and smaller residential. Whether it promotes public health and safety, again, we've reached out to fire, to police, to transportation, to others. And the comments that we've gotten back have not indicated that there are particular dangers, that there are particular threats to public health and safety. So our recommendation or our conclusion was that this proposal would promote public health and safety. With regard to whether it provides for the district character and ability of uses, I have to look back at the growth policy and suggest you to do the same. The growth policy really is a statement of compatibility. It's a statement of a very thoughtful process that was developed over, I'm not sure how long, at least a couple of years, I assume, developed a growth policy and the future land use map. So I would say that does provide for districts, does provide for suitability of uses. Two more criteria: whether zoning amendment would correct an inconsistency or meet the challenge of a changing condition. This amendment would not correct an error or inconsistency, but it does meet the challenge of a changing condition, and that is housing. I've looked through the city housing policy, read through it. There are several policy statements that support this. I know Aaron Pehan is available as well from the Housing and Community Development Department to address this. So I would say that that's a changing condition that this project would help to meet, or this rezoning would help to meet. And then finally, is the project in the best interest of the city as a whole? And again, you have to look back at the growth policy and say, that is a public policy indicating what types of development are appropriate in what locations. And this proposal substantially complies with that. And so I would recommend to you that this project is, based on the growth policy, is in the best interest of the city as a whole. And then finally, you have before in your staff report a recommendation for approval of adoption of the ordinance to rezone the property from the current zoning to RM1-45.
Thank you, Kara, for sharing Dave's presentation to the planning board. Appreciate that. Now I'm going to turn it over to Friends of Grant Creek, and we'll just believe you're on here under Wendell, but Aaron Nuzzo will present. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Do we see? Okay, thank you, everybody. Good evening. My name is Erin Nuzzo. I'm born and raised in Missoula, but I've lived in the Cottonwood condominiums at the mouth of Grant Creek for the last 5 years. I am really looking forward to welcoming our new neighbors at 2920 Expo Parkway based on the existing zoning. Thank you for allowing us the time to present our support of the current development and the existing zoning and our opposition to the rezone application. All right. I would like to begin by providing you with a 30,000-foot view of the proposed rezone location. Grant Creek is a tributary of the Clark Fork River, and its health ultimately depends or impacts the health of the Clark Fork River. So developing a river corridor plan to address and balance development, recreation, environmental considerations, and community aesthetics is part of our growth policy on page 86. Grant Creek has been designated as impaired by the Montana Department of Environmental Quality and the FWP. It's been impacted by previous development downstream, and reparation of Grant Creek was an integral part of receiving the BUILD grant, and now additional funding is being sought to make it right. The Grant Creek neighborhood lies within the Wildland Urban Interface, or WUI, which means wildlife and wildfires. Grant Creek is unusual in that it has only one ingress and egress. That means there is only one way in and one way out for our residents and responders during an emergency, like a gas line break, as one happened a few weeks ago, or a wildfire. We would like to give you a quick overview of the current daily and seasonal population of Grant Creek north of I-90. Currently, there are 635 multi and single family residences. The existing zoning, which we support, almost doubles our current population and would provide for a mix of 502 more multi and single family residences. The proposed rezone would allow for 1,195 of only multi-family units while tripling the population in Grant Creek. In addition, the I-90 Reserve Grant Creek Road interchange serves as a gateway welcoming visitors and employees year-round. In addition to the food and fuel services, we have 4 hotels with 374 rooms and associated vehicles. And there is room for 3 more hotels, 2 to 300 more rooms and vehicles. The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation welcomes 60,000 guests a year, plus school buses almost every day from April to May. Up to 400 vehicles a day travel to Snowbowl in the winter, with another 50 to 100 parking in the lower lot across from the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. And I want to go back, it's not just in the winter, but they also have mountain biking opportunities up there in the summer. I would like to now show you the parcels under consideration. This image is from the Montana Cadastral. Yes, you can see this. Yeah, close enough, sorry. You can see the southern parcel highlighted in blue with the northern parcel directly above it. These 2 parcels contain only 28 developable acres because of the steep slope to the west. With the potential rezone, this could be developed with 1,195 residential units, resulting in a 43 unit per acre density. These parcels share Expo Parkway with 3 existing hotels and 1 restaurant. Eventually, these new residents will be sharing Expo Parkway with 6 hotels. These parcels lie directly west of the Cottonwoods, where I live, and the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and will share Stonebridge Road. The rezone area lies directly south of Old Quarry Road. It's a neighborhood of modest single-family homes that are 1-story or split level. Our support for the current rezoning and development is clear. We would like to make it clear that we feel a shared responsibility to provide housing equitably according to Grant Creek's unique site constraints. We recognize Missoula needs for rental homes and want to provide our new neighbors with a neighborhood setting that is sustainable, complementary, and cohesive. We support smart growth concepts like mixed housing types and mixed-use development. The density of the current zoning, while almost doubling Grant Creek's population, takes into account the site and transportation limitations. 17.6 units per acre provides mid-density development called out for in Missoula's growth policy. The existing zoning went through a rigorous public policy and enjoys strong community support. New zoning deserves the same. The Grant Creek Area Plan is a living, active document, an amendment to the current growth policy, and as such should be considered with making decisions regarding zoning. The Friends of Grant Creek mailed out a petition supporting development and the current zoning and opposing the rezone application. We had a 45% return, with over half of those making written comments. These petitions have been submitted and are part of your meeting packet. And, well, do they have a meeting? Yeah. Okay, yes. Meeting packet, excuse me. And as you may have already seen, the neighborhood overwhelmingly supports development and the existing zoning. However, they oppose the high-density rezone application. We also provided those outside Grant Creek to weigh in through iPetitions and received 74 unique signatures from other neighborhoods. There has also been a formal protest petition process. More than 25% of the required property owners within 150 feet of the rezone area have signed, including myself, requiring 2/3 city council vote for approval. We will review the rezone application using the same review criteria you are required to use for Title 20. The city growth policy, adopted in 2015, is Missoula's guiding document for growth and development It is divided into the following categories: safety and wellness, livability, economic health, housing, community design, and environmental quality, much more than a single land use designation map. Friends of Grant Creek feel that the current residential zoning is much more in line with our growth policy's goals and objectives than the proposed free zone. Another plan applicable to this application is the Grant Creek Area Plan that was developed in 1980, an amendment to our city growth policy. Regardless of age, this is a quote, regardless of the age of the plan, some neighborhoods are still invested in and rely on their plans for guidance and continue to work on implementation, end quote. That's page 140 of that policy. In all cases, the land use recommendations from the growth policy and associated neighborhood plans should be viewed in conjunction with the goals, objectives, and actions of the growth policy. And you can see the pages on the slides. We will highlight a few specific growth goals that are not fully covered in the other review criteria. As you have seen, the future land use designation map, page 128 of 343, does designate this area for high density development. However, there is not only fine text on the map itself, but also accompanying explanation on page 114, explaining that these designations are approximations and must be considered in conjunction with all the other growth policy goals and site-specific conditions. The recommendations from Development Services and Housing and Community Development staff may take these factors into consideration, but they do not give them any weight in comparison to this map of approximate designations. Livability. The first growth policy category we would like to highlight is livability. We feel the proposed rezone does not address any of these livability factors. A walkable neighborhood with clean air and water, lower the combined cost of housing and transportation. This new development is market rate housing requiring the use of automobiles since the area lacks public transportation. Easy access to services and employment, not only avoid traffic congestion, but provide safe, reliable transportation options. Involve the community in development decisions. For our economic health, the city growth policy calls for workforce housing with the caveat that the housing does not require the use of automobiles. The Grant Creek neighborhood is a vehicle-dependent area, as we've already talked about. For many reasons, the growth policy supports focus inward concepts and development. It does mean, however, that development should center around services, amenities, employment, be near public transportation, and have multimodal transportation options, all of which Grant Creek lacks. The rezone does not support economic health as detailed in the growth policy. Finally, specific to growth policy is housing. We feel the rezone does not meet the requirements that the growth policy calls for other than meeting a density approximation on the future land use designation map. Both the growth policy and the housing policy call for affordable rentals and homes. The rezone will provide market rate apartments only, as Mr. Alt has just confirmed. We are all affected by the rising cost of living in Missoula. The growth policy calls for housing that actually decreases residents' costs of living besides rental costs. With the rezone, commute times for everyone will be longer. There is no public transportation and none planned for the foreseeable future. No multimodal transportation options are available at this time. There is dependence on vehicles, and it is located away from services and employment. The proposed rezone will increase resident cost of living and does not support the growth policy. The rezone is not designated to secure safety from fire and other dangers. As mentioned earlier, Grant Creek has a single ingress and egress, tripling the population at the mouth of the canyon with only one way in and only one way out puts stress on emergency services. Grant Creek Road has minimal to no shoulder, making access and evacuations tenuous. You can see by the slide. This slide actually is from 2016, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The Wildland Urban Interface, or WI, was mentioned earlier. The rezone is part of and directly impacts the residents and neighborhoods that are within the WUI. Residents have been warned for years by fire agencies that a major wildfire in the Grant Creek drainage is not an if, but when. Therefore, many residents have been mediating their properties in preparation for such an event. Again, this photo shows what happens during a wildfire event. In 2016, Northwestern Energy Line started a blaze, and immediately Grant Creek Road was lined with onlookers, congesting the ingress for emergency vehicles and the egress for evacuating neighbors. Tripling the Grant Creek population at the mouth of the canyon will only exacerbate these issues. The rezone does not promote public health, public safety, or general welfare. Idling vehicles will only add to Missoula's air pollution. They will also leave pollutants on the surfaces that will be washed into Grant Creek. The impact of more than 10,000 additional vehicle trips a day to an already congested situation will make it difficult for emergency services to reach their destination in a timely manner. Grant Creek is fortunate to have a 3-mile recreational trail. However, there is no city park or playground within a 10-minute walk, nor without crossing any major roadways. With existing traffic, it is unsafe for pedestrians and bicyclists beyond the Grant Creek Trail to access any services or amenities. The rezone offers no bus pullout or turnaround, already a dangerous situation with vehicles passing loading buses. All of these factors contribute to the general welfare, which is not being met by the rezone. Adequate transportation and infrastructure is not being provided for this rezone. Missoula already feels the effect of Grant Creek congestion north of I-90 and on Reserve Street south of I-90. Our workforce, our visitors, and neighbors alike. The Montana Department of Transportation update at the Grant Creek Road I-90 interchange happening this summer is welcomed and appreciated, but was requested over 20 years ago to meet the needs of the current population and the Grant Creek Plan. The update will help to somewhat alleviate the current traffic congestion problems. However, tripling the area's population at the source of the congestion will only exacerbate the current traffic congestion problems, not to mention the 3 additional hotel sites. We have heard from parents concerned about overcrowding at schools. While staff made their recommendations without comment from the school district, the parents would like to know how much capacity exists. As previously mentioned, the city trail system is not connected for safe commuting or any non-motorized vehicle. I myself have tried to make it to work on a bike and almost got hit by a truck. And the rezone does not provide for a public community park. We believe the high-density rezone will not provide adequate light and air for the surrounding developments and neighbors. The rezone's 4-story buildings will abut, tower over, and shade the 1-story split-level homes on Old Quarry Road, the 2-story Cottonwood neighbors, and the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. The associated resident vehicles will certainly contribute to poor air quality. The high-density rezone does not consider its effects on motorized nor non-motorized transportation systems. With an additional 10,000 vehicle trips a day, the rezone would exacerbate traffic congestion, affecting emergency services, visitors, workforce, and residents. The rezone application did not consider the impact of seasonal traffic flows in the area. 4 hotels with 347 vehicles, Snowbowl with 250 to 400 vehicles daily, depending on how much snow we get. Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, 60,000 visitors a year. Non-motorized transportation was not considered as well. Again, as I mentioned, there is no safe trail connection. The only bike lane connecting the neighborhood to services is by North Reserve, and most cyclists, including myself, refuse to use it because Reserve Street is the busiest and has the most dangerous intersections in the entire state. To offer a clearer picture of the impact of this level of density on transportation in the area, this slide shows how many trips an average household makes a day according to the 2017 National Household Travel Survey. As you can see, the number of trips from just this level of high-density rezone would actually surpass the current number of current residents and current zoning combined trips. Again, these numbers only represent residents. We also welcome many visitors year-round. I would like to bring my colleague RT into the conversation, RT Cox, excuse me, into the conversation to review the Montana Department of Transportation update and the traffic impact study.
Thank you. My name is RT Cox. I live on Old Quarry Road, very close to this proposed development. I am opposed to the rezoning, and I'm in favor of development under the existing zoning, which was designed to fit the character of the neighborhood. It's my role here to talk a little bit about traffic. I'm hoping everybody can see this drawing. This is the Montana Department of Transportation drawing that shows the design of the new lanes that are proposed to be added by October. The measurements of distances on the slide are in such tiny print that you can't read them. And so I wrote down a few of them in larger print. If you look at the long arrow that goes down from the upper left, the starting point, there's a line across the street, Grant Creek Road, that's at 519 plus 00. That's a surveying station. So that's the starting point. Then as you go up, oh, can we do this? Can people see the cursor?
Yeah, but they're not seeing the correct. They're seeing this.
Oh. They're seeing
Go back. They're seeing this.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why.
People are seeing the actual MDT drawing instead of the one with my illumination on it. But can they see the cursor?
No, they can.
Okay. Okay.
Now you can.
People can see the cursor?
Yes.
Okay. So the starting point for the survey, because you have to have a starting point for the survey, is right here. And this is 519 plus 00, which means 51,900 feet. That's just the starting point. Then as you go up, there's the line where everybody has to stop behind. And that's at 519 plus 40. So this is 40 feet up the street from the starting point. Then you go up here, you see where the lane starts to, there's a right turn lane, and then there's a center lane, and then there's a left lane that eventually is a left turn lane after it goes under the interstate. So this all starts at 520.85 or plus 85 feet. So that is a distance from the stop line where everybody has to stop to here is 145 feet. Then there's a little bit of extra room as this right turn lane starts to develop, but nobody that's queued up in traffic can really move into this lane until they're somewhere in here. So this is 521.47 feet. So that's another 62 feet from here to here. So what does this mean? A Chevrolet dually crew cab is 22 feet long. A regular cab pickup is 19.5 feet long. A Honda Accord is 16 feet long. So how many vehicles will this extra lane accommodate of a distance of 145 feet from here to here? So that's going to be another 9 or 10 or 11 vehicles. So this lane will be filled with all the people that want to turn left to go to Orange Street and Van Buren. This lane will be filled with people that want to go straight. This lane may or may not be full because people might have a chance to turn right, but they can only get into that lane because this is the starting point of the lane. So we're talking about a stoplight that regularly has 20 or 25 or 30 vehicles backed up behind it. We now are creating, and I'm not criticizing MTT, I'm really glad they're doing this because it will help. But this will accommodate another 9 or 10 or 11 vehicles. This lane is only going to be useful if the people that want to turn right can get into this zone before they get backed up here. What is the reason for this constraint? Why doesn't this lane go way back here? Because Grant Creek itself runs the length of this road until it drops into a tunnel that goes under the interstate right here. There's no way to make this lane longer unless you obliterate part of Grant Creek. So the developers hired an outfit called Abilene Traffic Services, which is a professional engineering firm in Helena, to prepare a report on the traffic. And it's interesting, Mr. Alt said earlier this evening, we got hammered on traffic last week. Well, let me tell you why he got hammered on traffic last week. Because Mr. Abilene stated before the Planning and Zoning Board that he has a concern about traffic exiting Expo, that traffic was backing up past Expo, that there was a pretty large backup of traffic. These are quotes that I took after reviewing his presentation to the Planning and Zoning Board. He rates the performance of this intersection on a scale of A to F, with A being good. He rates this as D after this project is built. He said that 5,000 cars per day would be added to this intersection, which in his words were a very large increase in traffic. That is why Mr. Alt got hammered on traffic at the Planning and Zoning Board. Right now, we are seeing queues behind this light that back up to Stonebridge. This is the street that goes into the Starbucks. Expo is up a couple hundred feet, and Stonebridge a couple hundred more feet. This intersection is stressed, and even with the addition of this lane for through traffic, all of the people turning left are going to get in this lane because it's a single lane turn to go eastbound on I-90. And these people that want to turn right, you know, if they're pulling a camper coming out of the town pump and trying to get into this lane, they're going to have to queue up behind these people that are backed up here. So the obvious implications for safety, emergency access, emergency vehicles, this is going to help. It's going to help a lot during low traffic volume times, but when 30 or 40 cars are backed up here, this isn't going to solve the problem. So I'm going to stop at that point. I think I've made these points pretty succinctly, I hope.
Thank you, RT. Appreciate that. All right, so the surrounding densities were not considered in the rezone. As you can see, the rezone allows a density of 43 units per acre, and the surrounding residential densities range from 8 to 17 units per acre. The rezone density would be 2.5 to 5 times greater than the immediate residential developments. The current zoning that we support is much more compatible with its neighbors at 18 units per acre. The rezone application does not consider the surrounding characters and uses. The rezone only provides one type of market rate rental only housing. The surrounding development uses are wide range from single family to multifamily homes to commercial. Also offered are rentals and home ownership in neighborhood settings. The current zoning is aligned with its surroundings and with the Grant Creek area plan. Rezone review criteria 2 was not addressed in the rezone application. It does not correct an error, clarify an inconsistency, or meet a challenge by a changing condition. The rezone application also does not address rezone criteria 3, that the proposed amendment is in the best interest of the city. Considering Sorry about that. Considerations of all the review criteria, the rezone application does not meet the necessary requirements for approval and therefore should be recommended for denial. We are welcoming zoning for 502 residences. I'm looking forward to welcoming them personally, which almost doubles the population and will certainly have an impact on traffic. However, it would also provide a variety of housing types with walkable neighborhoods and complete streets, rental units, and the opportunity for home ownership, which, as we know, is so important right now. And the mixed-use development and a more rigorous subdivision review process. It adheres to the Grant Creek Area Plan, an amendment to our city's growth policy. We're asking for smart growth and for neighborhood involvement in a planning process. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to present tonight. And now, this is your opportunity for questions, if we have time. I know it's tight.
Thank you so much for that presentation. In the interest of time, we will push on to Beardsley. Rocky Mountain Health Foundation. We'll come back to questions and comments at the end. We've just been running a little over. I know everyone's interested. Perfect. Well, I will turn it on over to you now. So Grant Parker, I'll ask you to unmute and perfect. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the invitation to participate in this Grant Creek Neighborhood Council meeting. As most of you know, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has filed a protest against the rezone. The Elk Foundation has also clearly stated that we are in support of the current zoning, which, as has been pointed out by numerous people, does allow for a very high density and can make a significant contribution to meeting Missoula's housing needs. Because we're now after 8 o'clock, I'm not going to plan on spending 10 minutes talking about the Elk Foundation's issues, because I think most points have been raised. But suffice it to say that as a member of this neighborhood, we were proud to move into the Grant Creek area, and in reliance on its character and our neighbors, and very importantly, the Grant Creek Area Plan, which was in effect when we moved into the area and is still in effect now, and is part of the Missoula growth policy. And we're very disappointed that both city staff and the developer have really focused on the single issue of increasing density, and of it failed to address the numerous other aspects of the growth policy and the Grant Creek Area Plan. And what seems to be the case is there's a concerted effort to allow for increased density, to externalize the costs of doing that, despite all that great language in the plan, and in specific the Grant Creek Area Plan that talks about making sure that issues such as transportation, protection of wildlife, safety, being able to handle wildfire issues, which we know are going to happen at Grant Creek, be addressed beforehand, rather than providing for significantly increased development and hoping that it'll all occur at some point. Just to facilitate it, I know there was an excellent presentation by the Friends of Grant Creek and others, and I know people are tired and we're having to focus on meeting of the land use and planning committee tomorrow, and then we apparently will then get into the public comment period, and we all have a long road to hoe. So I would like to take this opportunity to wrap it up. Thank you again for the opportunity to participate. We have presented our petition with a number of our points to the city, and it was part of the record of the Planning Advisory Board, and should be a record as we continue on, and encourage people to read that, and would like to make sure that both us and Friends of Grant Creek have an opportunity to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Parker, for representing Rocky Mountain Health Foundation for that presentation and conclusion. Our agenda does provide for some questions and comments, and just want to bring that forward, and also just bring we've had, since the start of this meeting, there have been 4 additional comments that have been added to the Engage Missoula page. So again, great way there's your ability to add public comment and ensure that your thoughts, questions, and concerns are raised here. So I just want to bring that to your attention that, again, you just come on down here and you're able to add more questions right on in here. All right, and with that, I'm happy to finally be able to call on Michael Cole for a question. Mr. Cole, you're on. Mr. Cole, I've asked you to unmute, but if you have the ability to do that, that'd be great.
Right, how about now?
Perfect, we got you. Thank you.
Good. Right, so I had a couple of things I would like to, one, I guess I would like to put to rest that's come up tonight and has come up before. As far as, let me start here. So in regard to wildfire emergency evacuations, I don't believe the planning department is asking the right people or requiring them to respond. Now I do admit they ask for input from the city fire department and the city police department, but there's a big difference between city urban fire response and wildland fire response, including who has jurisdiction. And that was very obvious in the comments from the city fire department when they dealt mostly with whether or not the developer was meeting code requirements. So I think we need to look at this from the standpoint of when you have an access and egress issue, you can't stop asking questions at the city boundary. You have to go talk to the county folks and other folks who would be affected on if there was a wildland fire or if there was evacuations associated with that. So with that in retrospect, the Missoula County Office of Emergency Management, I know when I've been on fires in the urban interface in the last 21 years around Missoula, that person always shows up multiple times at our meetings to coordinate response. So there isn't any reason why you should not get a comment from the Office of Emergency Management. The next one is the county sheriff. And the county sheriff is actually the official that's responsible for all those evacuations within the county of Grant Creek. So there's coordination that the city needs to do from that aspect. The other one is the Missoula County Rural Fire Department. And 2 big ones are DNRC with the state from the Southwest Land Office and the Forest Service and Fire Management from the Missoula Ranger District. All of those entities have the expertise to discuss what issues are involved with access and egress of Grant Creek, where the city is very limited in that response because their jurisdiction ends at the city line. So that's a big issue I think that needs to be brought up that was not looked at. In my background, I used to deal with looking at cumulative effects on projects. And to me, that is a cumulative effect that has been overlooked by the city without getting responses from those entities that are the main people that would be involved in emergency access, ingress, and egress. Another thing I'm going to bring up is pedestrian crossing of Grant Creek Road, which is really starting to get out of hand. I know people that live up here, I would guess right now at the time it's mostly people in the hotels that are running back and across 3 lanes of traffic to either get to the gas station to buy something or Starbucks to buy something. They don't go down to the intersection on I-90 to cross where it's safe. They wait till the traffic slows down or stops, waiting for the green light, and then they take their chances to run across the highway. And I know for a fact that in the last 10 years, even with a crosswalk down on Reserve between when Ruby's Hotel was there was a person that got killed crossing the street there, even when there was a crosswalk. So how do you avoid a situation like that if you add additional housing, the numbers that we're talking about in the proposed rezone? And the only thing I can think of is you'll end up adding street lights with pedestrian crossings at Stonebridge Road and at Expo Parkway. So then what is that going to do to the traffic congestion? So this is, once again, this is not a walkable neighborhood, but people take their life in their hands trying to go buy something. And that's a huge safety issue. Another one that Mr. Alt brought up earlier was the question of infrastructure and what is it that, can't be fixed in regard to this project. Well, a lot of people like myself have known Reserve Street for a long time. Some of the neighbors up in Old Quarry remember Reserve Street before there was a bridge across the Clark Fork. And as soon as that 4 lanes of traffic was put in, those additional lanes when it was originally 2 lanes, for one thing, that project took years to complete. And then as soon as those 4 lanes were in there, those 4 lanes were full. And that was before all of the development on Mullen Road and towards the west of Reserve happened. So that is the part of the infrastructure which I don't believe can be fixed unless possibly using a bypass for US 93 to another location, or making another on-ramp on I-90 west between the airport exit and the Reserve Street exit. So to me, that's a kind of infrastructure that I don't think can be fixed anytime in the near future. Probably not anytime in the next 10 years. And I do have I had another question that came in just because of the presentations. It's interesting to me that the planning department did not get any response from the school, but the developer could get a response from the school system. So to me, that's another issue where if you don't get an answer the first time, maybe you need to actually make an appointment and go over and talk to the people that you need information from to make a better decision. And thank you for the opportunity. And that's all.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Cole. I know you waited for a long time. So we have no other hands up. And so unless there's any other last moment questions or comments, just want to say thank you again to everyone who presented, Ken and Michael with KJA, City Council Representatives Mirta Becerra and Jordan Hess, Karen Sippy, Aaron Nuzzo, Wendell Beardsley with Friends of Grant Creek, Grant Parker with Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. Certainly appreciate being able to share Development Services presentation. And then, of course, Bert, thank you so much for pulling this together and helping out with this. All right. Well, does anyone else have any last thoughts, comments, or anything else they'd like to throw out there before we wrap up?
Yeah. Grant, can I just, or Colin, I'm sorry. My apologies. Colin, may I just go over the timeline one more time? So we have the Land Use and Planning Committee meeting that is tomorrow at 8:20 a.m. That is scheduled for 3 hours. You're welcome to provide public comment during that time. We're going to have presentations from the developer and the developer's representative, as well as from Friends of Grant Creek and from Mr. Parker with Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. I do ask that people, remember that the comments that have been made so far and tonight and at planning board are in the public record. This meeting will be entered into the public record. And so there's no need to make the same comment that you've already made. It is in the record, and it is in the decision, or it is in the body of information that council will use to make a decision. But you're absolutely welcome to attend those meetings, and you can register at the same meeting link that was shown at the beginning of the meeting. So, and then again, public hearing starts August and runs through the 14th of September. And that also, again, if you've submitted comments via email or on Engage Missoula, those are all captured in the public record. But that is that time frame for for official public comment. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for meeting. MCAT, thank you for broadcasting. And Kara, thank you for coordinating the Zoom. All right, everyone, hope you have a good night. Take care.